I'd like to start today with a very heartfelt thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to listen to what I have to share in regard to menopause and basically how to escape the top 5 symptoms of menopause. You're going to hear some things differently today. You're going to hear some different information in regard to menopause, and you're also going to hear some other information that might even be very positively shocking to you. And also, what you'll see as you end today is you'll see menopause in a new light and new hope for any level of menopause symptoms. Now, I've literally seen thousands of women and assisted them in overcoming menopause symptoms. But while we can think of the symptoms as the challenges, we can think of the hot flashes, the brain fog, the weight gain, the mood swings, and the list goes on of the different symptoms you may feel. But when we break this down very simply, most women feel basically out of control. And it reminds me of a time when I was 17 years old. I see personally at that time in my life, I had my first grand mal seizure. Now, for those who don't know what a grand mal seizure is, you would pass out, you would become unconscious, you would flip around like a fish out of water, and basically when you wake up from that event, you really feel like you've been run over by a Mack truck. It's just how all the muscles tighten in your body. And at that time, then I had every test known to conventional medicine. Now, the results of those tests were really inconclusive. You know, they were basically like, well, we'll level with you. There's no reason why you have had that seizure. And that was just probably a one-time incident. So I went on with my life, and then probably about a year later, I had another seizure. And this time, they put me in the hospital for a number of days. Again, ran every test known to conventional medicine. And yet, there was no reason again why I had seizures, but now I've had 2. So they diagnosed me as an epileptic and put me on anticonvulsant medications. Really to my dismay, and where I felt out of control, is basically I still felt this level of out of control because I was still having seizures while on the medication. Yeah, so it just really pained me to live in that state of being out of control. I didn't know what to do. Yeah, so what I started to do is started to dive into my own research. And what I found is that anticonvulsant medication that I was on actually had a side effect of creating basically neurodegeneration. So the very issue that I had, which is a degenerative issue of my brain, the overall medication I was taking would create more neurodegeneration. It didn't make any sense to me. I was confused. I really didn't know what to do. But then it led me to a point in my life where basically I became inquisitive. I needed more information, and I started doing my research. It was almost like this exploratory and hopeful state that I was in. And so it led me down a new path, which is where we're at today. And it reminds me of another story where I had this one particular client come into Depke Wellness, and she had already seen this other practitioner, one of the wellness practitioner of the stars, who was the hormone specialist. And this client of mine, she went to that individual, paid $500 for a 15-minute consultation, and basically they looked at her blood and noticed low progesterone, and they noticed low estrogen. So it made logical sense to actually may have a recommendation of a prescription, actually estrogen and progesterone creams. It makes complete sense. Yeah, but honestly, as she went down this path, they retested her blood again and again, and consistently found that the estrogen and the progesterone was still low, even after months and months of taking these creams. So basically, that has you thinking. Now, if the estrogen and progesterone are low, and the levels aren't going up in the blood, where's all this estrogen, where's all this progesterone going? And it also brings up a thought, very often in life we use crutches. My dad, who's going to be 90 very soon, my dad was a truck driver. We grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and he was always this vibrant, alive, and moving forward, powerful kind of guy. And when he walked briskly, he walked with purpose. And then one day, when I came back from vacation, I noticed something very different with my dad. Instead of that brisk, powerful walking with purpose, I saw him and he was walking a bit like this, gingerly, shuffling, and he also was using a cane. So he had this crutch and he had this little shuffle that had now become a part of his life. And we think of things that we know to be true, yet we find out they're not true. We've all heard that in the past, as human beings, we believed that the earth was flat. But now we recognize, and we've recognized for some time, that the earth is not flat, the earth is actually round. But we've heard other stories that we think to be true, but they're really not true. So have you ever heard of Napoleon syndrome, also known as short man syndrome? Or maybe you've heard that if you eat before you swim, you'll get cramps. Or perhaps you've heard that if you touch a toad, you'll get warts. Or how about, have you ever heard the saying, you're as blind as a bat? So as we get going today, I first want to let you know that at the end of this presentation, for those of you here live, you will be provided this in a link in an email. For those of you who are watching this as the replay and the recording, at the end of today's presentation, you will get a free bonus gift. And all you have to do is just stay on until the end. And I know and trust that you're going to do that anyway, because this information is so completely invaluable to you. The first thing that I want to really discuss as we get into the presentation is symptoms of menopause. And the symptoms of menopause vary widely from one woman to another woman, but there are some certain symptoms that are common. And so if I can get a share on what those symptoms would be, we'll start discussion talking about these collectively. Now, yes, so the first symptom, and I mentioned this before, is the hot flashes. You get what I'm meaning. Maybe you go and you lay down and you cover yourself in a fuzzy blanket to read a good book, yet you have to throw off that blanket almost in a fit of rage because of that dreaded hot flash. So that one brief moment of relaxation you may have in your life is taken away by something that you feel out of control over, tied into the hot flash. Now, and also, yes. So another symptom is insomnia. Very often as you're going through menopause, you'll begin to notice that maybe you're not falling asleep well and easily and effectively. Perhaps you're falling asleep but waking up through the night. Maybe it's the hot flashes waking you up. Maybe it's something else. Or maybe you feel that you fall asleep easily and effectively, and you sleep through the night, so it seems, but when you wake up, you just don't feel energized. Maybe your snooze alarm is your best friend. Maybe it's tough to get going in the morning. And yes, another symptom. And that symptom is weight gain. What most people don't recognize, or I should say more specifically, most women, just to really level with you with this, is that when you go through menopause, if your hormonal system is not in balance, which is what we're going to discuss today, your body will actually increase fat cell production in the event of attempting to increase estrogen production, which is why so many women, and perhaps yourself, you're thinking this right now, that yes, I put on 15, 20 pounds during menopause, and it seems impossible to actually get rid of that fat. And it could be true simply because your body is trying to maintain some level of hormone balance. And another symptom? Yes. the dreaded brain fog. And this happens so often, and you may feel some type of reaction, perhaps, such as you walk into a room and you don't know why you walked into it. Perhaps you pick up your phone, you go to dial your phone, and you're thinking, who am I calling? Or maybe you put down your keys and you just don't know where you put your keys. Or just maybe you recognize that you're not comprehending like you used to or learning like you used to. But those are all tied into this. And yes, you are right. And the other aspect of this, and this is something I shared earlier, you're really just feeling out of control. Because as much as you would like to not have flashes, get a good night's sleep, be in control of your weight, and be able to think properly, that, as I mentioned earlier, almost encompasses the entire aspect of what's going on with menopause symptoms, is feeling out of control. So, with that said, we can understand what symptoms you're potentially dealing with right now. But the question, though, is why do so many women suffer with these menopause symptoms? And I'm so happy to share this with you. And I can tell you right now that you'll probably not hear this from most men. And I'm just going to level with you right now. Men have it very easy. That's something you're not going to hear from men too often. And I recognize this by simply seeing women in my office. The thousands of women that have come through the years, what I can recognize is that, women typically are taking care of their children. They're taking care of their husband. You're taking care of your home. Perhaps you're taking care of your community and or your church. Oh, and guess what? Now you get to work a full-time job also. We throw around words like equality, but there's no equality in that. Basically, just to really level with you, women in our culture are overworked, overstressed, and overwhelmed. And I would say that is the single biggest factor into why women are suffering with menopause symptoms today. And that's something that we're going to discuss on a much deeper level as we go further today. Now, the next question is, what is the one true symptom of menopause? So ladies, as we look at these different symptoms that we have up here, which one do you think is the right one to have? And so somebody's mentioning hot flashes. Because, and very often I hear that because that's the most consistent symptom that I'll actually hear of. But what I can tell you though right now is that none of these are the true symptom of menopause. The true symptom of menopause is simply this. There it is, ladies. That is the one true symptom of menopause. It's the basic lack of your monthly cycle. And so if we think back into more traditional cultures, when people lived in one area, they ate whole food. They didn't have the levels of stress and overwhelm that women live with today. This was all women would, and not suffer with, all women would enjoy as they transition, because that's all menopause is. It's a transition from your basically from your childbearing years into your post-childbearing years, and that's all it should be. Even the word menopause is a word we really make up to recognize the transition, but then also attach all the symptoms to it. What you might not realize is that women in these traditional cultures, in these tribes and communities, were typically women that were worshipped and honored, and they were put up on a pedestal as women who reached higher levels of wisdom and a higher status in the tribe. But we think about it nowadays, and just to put it very simply, women are almost vilified and demonized at times for having menopause symptoms. I've had clients come into my office who they're afraid to share with people at their office that they have menopause, because as soon as they're not emotionally in what somebody would consider the right space, it's blamed on menopause. And they just don't feel confident anymore, and it really changes the dynamic of what's going on in the workplace. And really simply, just because we've attached a particular meaning, we've attached a certain truth to menopause that simply is not true. What if these symptoms weren't menopause at all? What if this is really just tied into the fact that I shared that women, you're basically overstressed, overworked, and overwhelmed? And what if the last 30 years of your life of living in those three overstates, what if that created an underlying factor that would basically lead you to suffering and being challenged regularly with these symptoms? And that's what we're going to really get in deeper to right now. And it's interesting too, this other question, what if your bioidentical hormones such as estrogen, progesterone, or testosterone is something you're currently on? And what I'm going to share is that that's what's become known as the truth. You know, today we're basically being told that if you have menopause symptoms, you should usually minimally be on an estrogen cream. Hopefully if you were, they would also have you on a progesterone cream, because you don't want the risk factor of driving up estrogen and creating an unhealthy state in your body. Or maybe perhaps you're even put on a testosterone cream. And the thought of that is that, well, since you're low in those hormones, giving you those will actually create the balance. But, you know, that's simply not the case, because basically these hormones are what we refer to as end result hormones. These are hormones that you produce at the end of your hormone production, as tied into what I'll refer to as your stress hormone system. Yeah, so while the use of these hormones could, potentially create a symptom relief for you, what I've seen through the years is that there's a small percentage of women who will have symptom relief with this, but very often the symptom relief is very short-lived, and then just a few months after this, all of your symptoms just come back, and they come back with a vengeance. Yes, I really want to share, and what's important for you to really know today is that basically what's at the core of why you're having these menopause symptoms is tied into your stress hormone system. And again, as you've spent the last 30 years overstressed, overworked, and overwhelmed, is it really unusual that you would have this lower level of stress hormones produced in your body? And then basically that stress hormone system is what takes over for your ovaries when you go from childbearing years to postmenopausal years. So looking at the likelihood of a stress hormone imbalance. Now, very easily, based on just what I shared a few minutes ago, tied into the overstressed, overworked, and overwhelmed, most women enter menopausal years. They go from childbearing years to perimenopause to menopause to postmenopause, and they enter that transition in a state of stress hormone imbalance and basically what I would refer to clinically as adrenal insufficiency. You may have heard it as adrenal exhaustion or adrenal fatigue. But very simply, this system should be taking over to produce the proper and healthy and balanced levels of estrogen and progesterone and testosterone for you to maintain proper health and balance, symptom-free, and the only change is tied into, again, the one true symptom of menopause, which is simply that you should not have your monthly cycle. And then when it occurs in this way, the other shift that obviously is occurring is that you no longer can have children. You're now in post-childbearing years. So that's really what should be going on in your body and with your hormones. Now, before we get into a little exercise today, I want to give you one last visual of what should be going on. Now, back in what we would consider childbearing years, your ovaries are producing approximately 66% of your female hormones. Now, as you are, even in childbearing years, your adrenal glands, as I've been referring to as your stress hormone system, your adrenals are producing approximately the other 34% of your female hormones. And also your adrenals have a direct impact on the function of your ovaries. So if the stress hormone system is out of balance, even in childbearing years, it can affect what's going on from a female hormone perspective. But then post-menopause, and this is where it gets very interesting. Post-menopause, your ovaries are not producing this level of female hormones, and at that time of your life, basically, your production of female hormones is basically thrown onto your adrenal function. So this is where you're going to produce these hormones to maintain balance, to be able to basically skate through this transition we refer to as menopause with relative ease, symptom-free, short of no longer being able to conceive children, and basically to only just have that one symptom of a lack of your monthly cycle. You see, but the problem here is as I've been mentioning earlier in this presentation, is that ladies, you've entered this transition with adrenals that also aren't working. So again, what's going to happen there? Now the female hormone production is going to be deficient, and then the challenge is, and it goes right into this, just to really level with you, and I shared this before, but I can't share this enough because of how important this is, and basically you're going to increase fat cell production. But in a simple reality for you, your fat cells cannot maintain your proper level of female hormones. This is still going to be too low, and it's still going to leave you suffering with the other symptoms of menopause. And the great news, ladies, you don't have to deal with this. Even if you're in the throes of menopause right now, even if you're the woman who's suffering with hot flashes and brain fog, and you're not sleeping well, and you have brain challenges with just feeling out of control, if that's the case, you can still find your balance. And also, if you're the woman who hasn't reached this time in your life yet, I want you to understand that this can actually be prevented, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.